The American College of Sports Medicine recently came out with a study that shows that 35% or more of the elite professional and college athletes around the world are struggling with depression, eating disorders, anxiety, ADHD, sleep issues, relationship issues, and so much more. As a sports psychology coach for over 40 years, David Essel believes that the number of professional athletes affected by mental health and other issues is probably closer to 60%. David's work includes using visualization, cognitive behavioral therapy, emotional freedom technique, meditation, the Sedona method, amino acid supplementation, as well as writing exercises designed to expose the mental and emotional patterns. David Essel, welcome to the show.
Welcome to Simply Walk the Talk. Our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what it is you do most of the time. This podcast explores all things health, wellness, fitness, lifestyle, and biohacking. Stay tuned as we explore various thoughts, methods, and experiences from a multitude of conversations between our interesting guests and experts through many fields of work. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Simply walk the talk. Simply walk the talk.
Josh, so great to be with you, my brother, and I'm excited about what we're going to be able to do to lift our audience up to the highest level possible today.
Well, yeah, thank you for your time, and I'm so happy that we were able to connect. I know you're in the U.S. in Florida, and I'm all the way here in Rio, and the beach is kind of looking at me from the window on the backside of this computer. But I'm really excited because you are sort of like the perfect guest to have on the show, because I like to combine lots of mental practices and physical practices, and you've obviously been doing a lot of this work, as we just discussed in the intro, for over 40 years. So I'd like to kind of discuss how you got into what you do, and then we can create a little conversation flow around that.
Yeah, well, in regards to my work in sports psychology, Josh, it started at 6. I was sleeping with a basketball in my bed at 6, knowing that the only place for me in the world was in the NBA. And I held that dream for a number of years, just like so many of us do. And I had pictures of my favorite stars all around the bedroom. Like you may have done the same thing, Josh. One of them was, I'm a little bit older, so some of the names I bring up may not resonate with some people, but there was a couple basketball players that had huge impacts on my life. Moses Malone is one, and Moses Malone was only 2 years older than me. But he's one of the most elite forward centers in the NBA has ever seen. I don't think he's given as much credit, but I met him when I was like 15. And he was on his way at 17 to go to the NBA. That's when you could skip right through high school and go to the NBA. So meeting him was incredible. But the other person that really impacted me, and we sent him a book recently, is Mr. Earl the Pearl Monroe. And Earl the Pearl Monroe. Oh, yeah. Now we're going back some time, Josh. And, in high school, they would call me Earl the Pearl Essel, because all I would do was mimic him constantly. His reverse spin, his fake reverse spin, his double fake reverse spin, and so that was where, how I grew up in this world. I played basketball. Obviously, I played at Syracuse University for 2 years, which was one of the greatest highlights I could ever imagine, and the people that I met there were just unbelievable. But, recently when we out with this book, I had to find Mr. Monroe, and my publicist TJ did find him, and he should have his book coming today in the mail. And Josh, it's funny. I feel like a 10-year-old when I met Earl the Pearl Monroe. I met him at 10 at a basketball exhibition that was canceled because of snow. I grew up in Syracuse, New York. Begged my dad to take me down. The blizzard was horrendous. They finally, I got my dad to weaken, and he took me there. Everything was canceled. And so he goes, it's not even a bother to go into the building. I said, no, we got to go in. So we went into the building, and the doorway from the outside to the gymnasium was open, but the gymnasium doors were locked. And Earl the Pearl was with Washington then. And it was an exhibition game against the New York Knicks. So I said to my dad, we got to wait a little while. And we waited. And my dad said, that's it. We got to go. There's no one coming. And a car pulled up. And I go, oh my God. Now I had no idea who it was, Josh, right? But the door opened and here are these, now I was 10 or 12. So here are these two guys that are monsters. And Earl the Pearl Monroe was dressed so hip, man. He had a full leather or a full jacket all the way down to his boots. His black boots were shiny like you wouldn't believe. He was style, man. He was everything. I got his autograph. And I will tell you, looking back at experiences like this, it is life-changing. Like, that's not an overstatement, like he actually gave me the time. He spoke to me. He was incredibly kind to this little kid. And I'm hoping, I put my cell phone in the book and I'm hoping to God that I at least get a text from him. If it doesn't happen, that's okay. But, these type of memories, all of us should be reflecting on, especially Josh, in the crazy world we're in today. And I'm not saying, live your glory days, like stay stuck in when you were a high school star or something and only talk about that. But we do need to go back in time and have gratitude, for so many things that happened that got us to where we are today.
I couldn't agree more. And I love that I can feel your passion through everything you were describing. And I'm very, very similar in that I thought, like, I remember my first ever email that I created was going pro 22 because I knew I was going to go pro and my number was 22. And I used to look up to Reggie Miller. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And then of course, like Clyde Drexler and a lot of these guys during that time. And I think like most kids who loved the sport of basketball, you couldn't help but remember Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and all these things. But I kind of was the guy that rooted for the underdog, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I appreciated people like Reggie Miller. And I used to emulate my game after him, sort of like you did with Earl the Pearl.
Yeah.
And then that I feel like led to lots of other things throughout my life because I got a chance to understand that these guys weren't just talented, but they worked their butts off. Some of the best players, especially like Jordan, would be the first in the gym and the last out.
Yeah.
And once I started to kind of understand that, then it helped me to formulate the best practices within myself. Stop worrying about how many points you make your team better.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I think this is a really good segue into what you do today. How do you leverage your background into a lot of your work today?
Well, everything, it comes from a mental perspective, Josh. It doesn't matter what we're dealing with, relationship challenges, addictions, financial challenges. And when we talk sports, we talk about someone like a Russell Westbrook or a Kyle Lowry last year that were starters that were asked to come off the bench, and they both came off the bench with this passion and this fire, type. And I love that. I love those guys that are so humble, that are so real, that all they want to do is what you said, help the team to win. And so it was a natural progression for me. I was a point guard, shooting guard. It was a natural progression for me to stay in a point of leadership once I got out of college, and I love to lead. I actually get off on it, being responsible, having the responsibility to keep the team up, to keep them running the offense the way it's supposed to be run. There was a lot of responsibility back then, and I ate it up, Josh. I remember in practices, after every practice, people coming up and say, Essel, would you take it easy on me on defense? It's not like this is a championship game, but I was playing the way that I had heard some other pros when I was a kid, that they practice as hard as they played. And I took that attitude, and I will say this, I think this is a very important point to make, whether we're talking about sports or a boss you have. My freshman high school coach was someone that was always on my back, Josh. No matter what I did, it wasn't good enough. And he continued to stress defense, learning how to take offensive fouls. Now, I'll tell you, in ninth grade, you don't give a crap about that. Like, you want to score, man. Yeah. I mean, I'm a shooting guard, coach. What the hell am I doing all these slide drills? I don't need these slide drills. I need to shoot more, type of thing. And he would just really come down on me, and I was always the one running sprints after practice because I didn't do something correctly. And he drilled into me in a way I didn't want it, though, but he drilled into me this most important part of the game, which is defense. Now, that's a strange or a strong statement to make, but I do believe it is true. And so I went to transfer schools because honestly, the guy's name was Coach Larry Miller, and I could not stand him. And I got my parents to agree to transfer to another school. The very first thing that happens, Josh, is Coach Dale Hesser at the new school sees me playing in a summer league, and he pulls me aside and he said, "Who the hell taught you to take offensive charges?" And I go, "Oh my God, Larry Miller." And a little while later, he goes, "Who got you in this kind of condition?" He said, "You've been running for 3 hours. You haven't taken a break. Like, who does this?" I go, "Well, Larry Miller," you know, and then he would say, "No, on defense, you have not, you haven't had a foul all summer, but you've had 20 steals. And the refs are
Mm.
always looking for the slap on the hand, the slap on the whatever. Who taught you that?" Oh my God, Larry Miller. And so Josh, I had
Wow.
originally like start to look at when I got to Syracuse University, I had the same questions. I was a walk-on. I did not get a scholarship the first 2 years. And so the coaches were saying, "Who the hell is this guy?" And as a walk-on, there's not many slots available. And so I won a position at Syracuse University out of defense. Now, I would get in the games and I scored my second year. I did great, but it was the only thing that got me on the team was defense. So here's a message for all of us. That boss that you can't stand, that teacher in college or high school or grade school you can't stand, that coach you can't stand, could be an answer to get you to the next level. And I will tell
Mm.
you, well, I didn't recognize that in my freshman and sophomore year in high school. It was drilled into me many years later, and I write about it in the book. I put out there point blankly, I did not like this guy. And yet he's the guy that forced me to become an all around player instead of a singular minded scorer. He's the one that forced me to understand the concept of the game so that when I come into life, it's the same thing. I've been a counselor, an executive coach, sports psychology coach forever. And a lot of the exercises we give even our professional athletes, they may go, "Now, wait a second. Do I really have to do that every day?" And the answer is yeah. Now, if you want to improve, follow my work. If you don't, you'll find another sports psychology coach that won't make you do this stuff, right? But I learned so well from Larry Miller about the foundations, the basics. And sorry, Josh, I'm going off so much, but you look at someone like a Kyle Lowry, 6 foot tall. He scores effortlessly in the lane against 7-footers. It's because of his footwork. It's fundamentals. It's all basic fundamentals. And you can see this in every sport. Guys like wide receivers that are slow. I love this. I love slow wide receivers who are crafty, like an Edelman from the Saints or a Cooper Kupp from the Los Angeles Rams. These guys aren't the fastest in the world, although Kupp is pretty quick, but they're not the fastest in the world. There's guys that are much faster, but they're clever. They found a way to utilize their gifts and their talents. And then the last story I'll tell, if you're if you're a grammar school athlete, high school, college, pro, it doesn't matter. Make sure you're in the right position for your gifts and your talents. And this is a mistake a lot of athletes make. There's an opportunity at any time to go to your coach and say, "Hey, I'm not getting enough playing time. What if I went to defense? What if there's many college quarterbacks that have transferred into the pros as defensive backs. There's many running backs that have turned into the pros as linebackers. So maybe you're in the wrong position. And I'll tell you a story. There's a guy, his name is Marquette King, and he's a punter in the NFL and the XFL. He was with the Raiders for a number of years. And then he went to the XFL a year ago, and he won the championship as the punter for Washington, D.C. United or something like that in the XFL. But here's his story that's fascinating, Josh, and this is important for all of us. In college, he knew he was going to be a wide receiver. That was his goal. That was his dream. And he knew it. And he was gifted and he was good and he was talented and he knew he was going to the pros. So over the summer, he would train with his quarterback and they would just go out in the field, run routes. And one day the quarterback didn't show up. So here he is by himself and he's in the middle of the field and he's got a ball and he's standing around and Marquette says, "God, I don't know what else to do. I'm just going to start kicking it. I'm bored." So he starts kicking the football. On the other side of the stadium is a coach walking from one building to another. And he looks over and he sees this football going higher than he's ever seen. And he comes around the stadium and there's the only player in the field is Marquette King. And the coach goes, "Marquette, who else was here with you?" Marquette goes, "Nobody. I'm waiting for the quarterback. He's never showed up." And he goes, "Well, who was here kicking that ball?" And Marquette looks at him. He goes, "I was." He goes, "Son, you just found yourself a new position and you'll be a pro."
Wow.
And he took the coach's advice. He became a punter and he made it to the pros, Josh. So whether it's, your parents and you're a 15-year-old listening to this right now and you're going, oh my God, my parents might be right. Yeah, they might be right. If you're a high school player, a college player, like get real with yourself, right? Because if you do say to someone, hey, do you see me in a better position? Do you see where I could play more? Do you see where I could be more of an asset to the team? Is there a position? These are questions to ask. Now, Marquette was really lucky, that he happened to have someone see him kick that, or he never would have made the NFL possibly. But, when the coach saw him, the coach said, no, your NFL career is not going to be as a receiver. He said, we need you as a punter. And it's just kind of cool. We have tons of stories like that in the book, Josh, to lift people up. And then we also have stories of, athletes that have struggled greatly and overcome major challenges in their lives. So the book, we wrote it for athletes to help athletes because I love working with athletes. But we have so many people now, and you can actually get the Audible for free. You can listen to the Audible for free at our website. We have so many, I'll call them lay people or weekend athletes that are picking up the book going, oh my God, I can use this to help with my pickleball game, which is one of the fastest growing freaking sports in the world, for Lord's sake, right? Or my tennis or my weekend golf or something. So it really became a book for everyone, even though it wasn't intended in the beginning like that.
It's beautiful. I think you really brought up a lot of interesting points. And what I resonate most with is the fact that you're talking about having awareness, but then also the motivation behind all of this, right? Because if a person is complacent and they feel like, they're fine with maybe only getting a few minutes a game or never getting into the game at all, and you just want to be a part of the team, then maybe this kind of messaging isn't for you.
Right.
But if you happen to be that person that feels like you have worked hard enough or quote unquote deserve to get more playing time and things like that, then yeah, maybe you do need to look at a different position or talk to your coaches. And if they still don't give you the answers you need, then you have to try to find a way to get it done. And
Right on.
what I thought was interesting about what you said is back to your coach Larry Miller. I, like you, had a lot of difficult coaches growing up, and there was times when I had a coach throw a basketball at me, and he was the toughest on me, even though I was our best player. But when I look back at it, it's like it's true. It's even though it was difficult in the time, looking past that, I realized he really truthfully was in his own way, his own weird
Yeah.
way, was trying to make me the best athlete I could be. And I did,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's really, really important. Let's talk directly about the book. Now I know Gordon has pulled up briefly on the screen here. He pulled up some examples
Mhm.
of the book, but let's talk about some of the challenges you've had with that and some of the successes you've had with the book. What is the name of it again?
Mental mastery and maximum performance for professional athletes. Josh, I have to tell you,
Mouthful.
yeah, it's a mouthful. That's right. But when that American College of Sports Medicine study that you opened the show with came out, 35% of elite athletes, professional athletes, and college athletes around the world are struggling greatly. We know it's at 60%. That's just from our private practice, And listen, there's probably 70 to 80% of the world that is struggling with something right now, and that's not an understatement. So the fact that we say 60% of professional athletes is closer to reality because it's closer to the world. People have this misconception about so many professional athletes. They don't understand, what it's like to have the pressure on your back, the target on your back every night to perform at a level to show that you're worthy of the money you're being paid. Some of these guys, I mean, we're talking millions upon millions of dollars. And as a general public, we don't understand the pressure they're facing. Number one. Number two, a lot of these athletes are away from their families 60 to 70% of the year. Now, just slow down. They're not with their partner 60 to 70% of the year. They don't see their children 60 to 70% of the year. I remember last year at the playoffs with the Miami Heat and Denver Nuggets, at the game that the Heat actually won. We only won one of the games against the Nuggets for the finals. They grabbed Jimmy Butler as he was trying to get off the court, and they say, hey, we just need to talk to you for a second. What'd you think of this victory tonight? And he goes, we did great. He goes, but listen, I've got to see my daughter. I haven't seen her in 3 weeks. And he just walked away. And
Wow.
so we don't know the pressure that they're under to perform, to perform with injuries, to perform with addictions. Max Crosby, one of the top linebackers in the league, NFL, with the Las Vegas Raiders, just came out with his statement that he is now 3 years sober, and he had to go to a treatment center, and he is a rock star. He's a leader in my eyes. I sent him one of the copies of the book, and I said, "Oh my God, brother, thank you so much for being open and honest." He's willing to help other individuals, other athletes that are struggling with addiction. I battled alcohol and cocaine for 30 years. I know the struggle of addiction. It's been a long time that I've been clean, which I am extremely grateful for, but I started very young. And so I see these athletes making millions of dollars. In the book, I write about Andre Agassi, who said that during the height of his career, he became addicted to methamphetamine. And the reason he did it was because of the pressure from sponsors and fans and tournament money. He felt the pressure of the world, and he needed to escape, he thought, in his mind. And so he used methamphetamine, and he became highly addicted to it as a way to try to deal with the pressures. A couple of years ago at the US Open, we had one of the star women tennis players. At the end of a match, she lost, and it blew my mind. And I wrote about it in a couple of our books because it's so disturbing. She sat at a press conference with a 24-ounce Heineken, drinking a 24-ounce Heineken during the press conference. Finally, one of the reporters got the you-know-what to say, "Hey, what are you doing drinking a beer?" And she said, "I have to soften the loss. I just lost. I have to have something to soften it."
Wow.
Those are the words of an alcoholic. Those are the words of the addict. Those are the words I used all the time, Josh. I know the addiction world way, way too well to let something like that slip by. And the thing that these athletes forget about is the fact that there are millions of young girls and maybe middle-aged women who are sober, watching their favorite player drinking a beer and saying, "I'm doing it to soften the loss." It gives them justification to go, well, if my favorite tennis star on national TV is saying that she needs to take a break and soften the loss with alcohol, it's okay for me to too. And it's just like what happened with John Morant in the last couple of years, right? I mean, he made
terrible.
it's incredible. He made a major mistake and then doubled that mistake, for God's sake, right? One of the most gifted, talented, exciting players that has ever hit the NBA. And, there's major penalties coming. He's not going to play in the first, 25 games this year.
Yep.
So, now where does that come from? Well, a lot of that is peer pressure, right? A lot of that could be childhood friends, and a lot of athletes make the mistakes of carrying their childhood, friends with them, taking care of them, buying them homes and cars and everything. And then in return, a lot of these childhood friends with their best intentions ever go, "You've made so much money. Come on, let's go out and have a good time." And then we have that pressure, especially with certain individuals raised in certain environments where you want to show your image as a tough guy. You want to have that tough guy image. Hey, I make 200 million as I have this gun next to I make 200 million, but I'm a tough guy at heart. This is what I really am. And so when we see those things happening, we really take notice. The NBA came out, 2 years ago with NBA Mind Health. Kevin Love, DeMar DeRozan, all these stars coming on. Kevin Love on national TV says in the ad, "The greatest move I ever made was the call for help with mental health." I mean, I herald these people. I herald these athletes. The Indianapolis Colts 2 years ago came out with "Kick the Stigma of Mental Health." And they had their team, their athletes on TV doing the PSAs, and so we're seeing that the American College of Sports Medicine came out with this study because it's real. The NBA doesn't put millions of dollars into NBA Mind Health unless there's a serious issue with mental health in the NBA. Same thing with the NFL, Major League Baseball. We tell a story in the book, Josh, the Los Angeles Dodgers and a pitcher, Andrew Tolles, who was released by the Dodgers. After he was released, they found out that he had schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, which I know in the world of counseling is a straight shot to the streets for most people that aren't medicated correctly. And so they took Andrew and put him back on the roster, never to play again, but so that he could have health insurance to get the medication he couldn't afford. So, we share these stories because we want the world to know. I mean, I want to blow up, the Dodgers for doing that. Are you kidding me? That's a powerful freaking move, and for the NBA to do that and the NFL to do it. So, the book came out because it is time that we take this stuff very seriously. A great fighter, a heavyweight fighter. Oh my gosh, Deontay Wilder. We
Yep.
tell a story about him, and it blew my mind, Josh. And I've worked with athletes for 43 years, but what Deontay said absolutely exploded my brain. He said, I put more of work into my mental health and meditation routine than about anything else that I do. I call heavyweight boxers on a daily basis to tell them that they're loved. He said every heavyweight boxer or boxer of any weight is going through mental health issues. We all have PTSD. We all have issues with memory. It's part of the sport. So I want these other boxers to know they're loved. And if they need to dump on me, if they need ears just to talk about how terrible things are, I am there for them. Now, Josh, think about this. A heavyweight boxer who's talking about mental health, meditation. And then he says this, he says, I go into the ring. I put so much effort into meditation. I go into sound. I don't hear a sound in the ring. I have my mind so trained that when I'm in there, if people are screaming for me or against me, I don't hear a thing. I'm locked down. And so we share these stories in the book, Josh, because we want people to know that, first of all, there's major issues, but there's also solutions. And that's why I go into 18 steps of the work we do to help professional athletes with their relationships, with their mental health, with their addictions, with their, even nutrition. I mean, my Lord, I remember when Dwayne Wade a number of years ago finally let go of the type of food he was eating that he had eaten since childhood. And he went on salads and all this really healthy stuff. And he said, he goes, at the end of 30 days, I've eaten more salad than I had my whole life. But then he also went on to say it was one of the biggest moves that extended his career. And without making that move, he would never have played at the level he did. Then we tell stories in the book about LeBron James's routine, which is absolutely mind-blowing. His self-care is incredible, and he has a Pilates teacher. He has a personal trainer. He has a nutritionist. He has a cryotherapy in his house, all this kind. Novak Djokovic, one of the greatest, right now, the greatest male tennis player ever, if we go by major wins. He talks about all of the practices they do with mindfulness. He says that at the end of every practice or every game, he walks in grass to ground himself, whether he's won or lost, it doesn't matter. He grounds himself. And he said, we are tree huggers as a family. We actually do hug trees, And he said, we go out as a family and we do yoga together. We do. So, and then also his dietary changes. He came out of the chute as a young player on fire, but within the first couple of years, he was suffering dramatically, mentally and physically. And they couldn't figure out what it was until by chance he ran into a doctor that said, you're allergic to gluten. You're allergic to wheat. You're allergic to dairy. You're allergic to all these things. And if you go on a very strict diet, which is going to be difficult for you, but I promise you, it'll turn everything around. And it has for him and many other athletes that decide to really get into heavy duty self-care. I mean, you look at the length of time of a Novak, of a LeBron James, it's much more than genetics and it's much more than practice. There's a lot of other factors, Josh, that go into being a sustainable professional athlete.
These are all very great points that you bring up. And I think this could be a great advertisement for your book. And my hope is that people do go and find your book. So we'll obviously list to that. And just to break up this moment a little bit, and then we can wrap up, so to speak. But what I would like to offer the listeners and the viewers, especially since I have you on the show, someone who's really dialed in clearly, what is something that a person could do right now, whether they're listening or watching, what is something that they can do to sort of break themselves out of this moment of sedentary lifestyle or sedentary thought?
Okay. Take your shoes and socks off, take your heels and your hose off, and rub your feet around the floor. If you're watching this on your phone, carry your phone with you and walk around your office or your house or anywhere you want to with bare feet. I'm going to go right back to Novak. We've known this forever, Josh. This isn't new news. You know that a grounding exercise is crucially important, not just after physical activity, even after meditation or after sitting at your desk for 8 hours. I mean, we want to move. You know, the body wants to move. The body needs to move. You know, for endorphin release in the brain, increase in circulation, for focus. I mean, all these different reasons. So if you're with us right now, take off those shoes and socks. If you're in an office and you get in trouble, I'll write a note and send you a note that Dr. David said it was okay for you to take your shoes and socks off in the office, and so you
Yeah,
won't
there you
get into
go.
trouble.
There you go.
But
Yeah.
but I would do that right now.
I love that you brought that up because anybody that's ever known me, or especially anybody that's watching this show, knows I talk tons and tons and tons about grounding and earthing. In fact, this is kind of a segue for the future. This show is going to be talking a lot more about that, because there's a lot of new tools that have come out in the last few years in a way that people can ground in their home. I obviously think that the most natural way of doing that is, as you explained, is to hopefully get outside. Like, for
Yeah.
instance, what I plan on doing right after this show is I'm going to go outside to the beach and walk barefoot on the beach and get myself in the water, which is the most conductive, right? The most
Yes.
earthing potential. But then we have to look at, like, people like myself who travel a lot. I'm sure you probably do as well. And so how can you keep up with that even while you're on the road? And there's a lot that we can talk about that. So we may save that for a later show, but I'm glad you brought that up, because that is very profound. Because at the end of the day, we are electrical beings, and if we can sort of dock ourselves into the earth is like a dock, and we can plug ourselves into that docking system to help open up the circuit.
Yeah.
And
I
if we
love
want better circulation, then there you go. So
Yep.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, I want to make sure that before we get into the last couple of questions on the show, I want to make sure that we touch on a number of things, because clearly you've worked with some high profile people. I just want to make sure that anybody that's listening to this, they don't come away from this thinking that they can't work with you because they're not a professional athlete or they're not a star. So how would you address that?
Well, for 43 years, we haven't just worked with athletes. You know, this happens to be a passion of mine, and a percentage of our work is with athletes. But Josh, it's a great question, and I'm going to answer it maybe in a little different way. Over the years, I have discovered within my own life so many different challenges that I didn't know how to actually get over. I had a failed suicide attempt in 1990. It had reached a point where that even though I was very successful and all those kind of things, I was lost, you know. And how did I get lost? Well, I was lost because we didn't find this out until after I was past the failure of committing suicide. I worked with a psychiatrist, and he had asked me, had I ever been through any mental testing, which is a normal question that a doctor after someone with a suicide attempt would ask. And I said, absolutely not. And he said, but you're a therapist and you're all these things, and you've never gone through any kind of testing for depression, anxiety, PTSD. I said, honestly, doc, no. I've always felt that I was great. But what had happened was, and there's always a reason for addiction, Josh. I mean, addictions just don't happen out of the blue. There's a benefit to addictions. Now, the benefit is short term. The benefit is short lived. But if there wasn't a benefit for addictions, we would never become addicted to food or alcohol or nicotine or pot or anything. Heroin, social media, if there wasn't a benefit to the addiction. And what I found in my case up until 1990 was the benefit of cocaine and alcohol was submerging the depression and anxiety that had been with me since I was a little kid. So in 1990, everything changed. And I have to say, in the most bizarre way to most people, it was the failed attempt that saved my life. And it put me on a completely new pathway. And part of that pathway was looking at and evaluating, the fact that I had carried depression, anxiety, ADD, and ADHD since I was a child. And after going through all these tests, I'll tell you something funny. I came in after doing all the tests with a doctor, and he gave me the results, and I said, they're all incorrect. Now, I wasn't trying to be arrogant, Josh, but I just said, doc, wait a minute. I can't get to this level in life. I can't get to this level of success and health. And, I've always put my body first, other than the drug use and alcohol use. Even then, I was training hard in the gym every day. But I said, I can't be. And he said, okay, you don't believe the end result. I said, no, I don't. He said, let's go through them again. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to send you to a different practitioner so that you know that it can't be me. And sure enough, Josh, everything he diagnosed came back. And he said to me, listen, the benefit of the addiction is that it kept you alive for 1990. It allowed you to outwork yourself with serious addictions. Now, think about that. You have this addiction that's covering up depression, anxiety, ADD, and ADHD so you can keep doing work. If you were exposed to the fact that you had depression, anxiety, ADD, and ADHD, you may back away from this work. You may see it as negative. But now we know the difference. And so I got a chance in that year of working with that psychiatrist to get a PhD level training in mental health, Josh. I mean, it was the one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. And I know that's the most bizarre thing. And if anyone's watching and you've lost a member of your family or a friend to suicide, I am praying for you right now. And if you're hurting and I can help you, email me at the website. I will talk to you at no charge. I know how serious this is, but I also know that for myself, if I didn't reach that bottom in such a horrendous way, I never would have changed. And I could have easily died of alcoholism or something else. It was getting that bad. So I look at all of those things as an opportunity for me to share with you, with the listeners, that no matter what people have gone through, I've probably gone through it too. I mean, my mom and dad both died in the last 2.5 years. My mom was my rock my whole life. I mean, I started my addictions at 12, Josh. No, not one time did she ever kick me out. Not one time did she ever try to tell me that I wasn't worthy of being loved. She was stern and she was unhappy with me, but she always made sure I knew I was loved. Even after just reaming me out, she would come back an hour later, and make sure know that, I mean, that's a miracle to have a woman like that in your life, So we became, at 30, I called my mom and dad and I said to them on the phone, 90+% of what you tried to teach me as a child was right. You were correct. And I am so sorry.
Wow. That is powerful because just imagine the weight of that gratification or verification from you, this the child,
Yeah.
from you to say that to them, because a lot of times parents of today go on thinking that they've screwed up the lives of their children, right? So to hear that coming from you is very, very powerful. And I also want to acknowledge your vulnerability and thank you for sharing the story of you trying to commit suicide and the failed attempt, because there can be a silver lining from all of that,
Yeah.
right? And you
Yeah.
happen to have the right support structure around you, and you were willing to find the ways to see that silver lining, and yet here you are. And there's a number of examples out there, like you said. Like, I'm sure we all know of someone, whether directly or indirectly, we know of someone who's been there. And so this is a shout out to everyone listening or watching. Feel free to share this kind of information, these tools, and this resource and David here, right? Like, he just offered to talk with anybody who needs the help, and I think that's huge. So use that resource,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're not alone.
Yeah, and Josh, it goes through everything. We work with relationships, people that are really challenged in relationships with a lover or family members. We help people blow up their businesses. We do great business work with clients, entrepreneurs, almost always entrepreneurs that want to go to a higher level. There really isn't anything we don't work with, and what's interesting is that so many times when I'm working with an athlete, I'm working with the same stuff that I'm working with John Smith, who, runs an aluminum company down the road, or something like that. I mean, human beings are human beings. And, and it doesn't mean that because they're an extremely high paid, gifted athlete that, we let them get away with murder like the NBA has, clamped down on several people recently. It's not that, but it is to understand that they do go through what we go through. And then the other thing is to remember this. Try to have compassion for your star athletes when they're off their game. Something just really beautiful happened in the playoffs with the Philadelphia Phillies, and I forget the second baseman's name, but he was an incredible all-star the whole season, and then he went into this major slump where I think he was like 0 for 20 going into the playoffs. He came into the stadium, and the fans gave him a standing ovation while he's in the worst place of his life, Josh. Now, those are fans, so I ask you to really hold back on your ridicule, your posts on social media, your coffee talk around the water cooler or the coffee, be really cautious when you're talking about professional. Oh, he's just lazy. He doesn't. We don't know what's going on. We don't know if their parents had just been diagnosed with dementia. We don't know if their partner is leaving them. We don't know if their child is shut down talking to them because they don't see them hardly ever. We don't know what's going on. We don't know. I'll go back because basketball is such an important part to me and to you. It sounds like too, Josh. Last year during the playoffs, I live in Florida. Miami Heat have always been a huge team for me. And Jimmy Butler played the whole playoffs with injuries, some pretty heavy duty injuries. And at every game when they would say, is your ankle bothering you? And they would ask him every game and he'd say, no, my ankle is absolutely fine. We just have to play harder. It's just, we have these guys like that who to me are incredible role models, and there he goes. There's my man, Jimmy. Oh my God. What a player.
So speaking of, just very quickly, I know we got to wrap up soon, but just speaking of Jimmy Butler and mental health, did you see the what did they call the media day when he came in with this,
Yes.
which obviously I think he's trolling and he's having fun with it and everything, but it's just interesting that you bring him up, and especially when we're talking about all these things, because is he really just trolling or is there something else going on? Who's to know,
Yeah, who is to know? And it could be that, he just wants to change. It could be that simple. Hey,
Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, I'm tired of this look. I want a new look. There's nothing wrong with that at all, and
Nope.
and so we have to, look. As a matter of fact, Josh, I've got one more story I've got to tell about basketball if we have a couple minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So Charles Barkley, I'm going to go back to Moses Malone. So Charles Barkley is talking about his mentor. And I'm watching this video. I'm going, I wonder who his mentor was. And he says, Moses Malone. And immediately my eyes lit up because this guy had such a huge impact on my life. Moses did. And so I'm listening. And he said, my first year in the league, I walk in, there's Moses. I go over to him. I said, gosh, it's so great to meet you. And, I've been watching you and you're an incredible player. And he said, Moses looked at me and he goes, you're fat. You're slow. You're lazy. You're never going to be an all-star. And he walked away. And Charles goes, what's going on? I walk in to greet this guy and immediately he puts me down, right? So Charles gets all frustrated and upset and he goes and finally says, screw it, I'm going to lose the 20 pounds. So he was at 290, gets to 270. And he gets to 270 and he's all proud of himself. And he goes, Moses, what do you think now? Moses walks over to him, looks at him and he goes, you're fat. You're lazy. You're really slow. You're never going to make it as an all-star. And Charles went nuts. He said, what's this guy want? I'm doing everything he says and it's not enough. He goes, so I lost another 20 pounds. I'm down to 240. I come back and I go, all right, Moses, now what do you think? And he goes, Moses looked at me and he goes, you're too light. Go to 250. Never leave there. You'll be an all-star. And it happened.
Wow.
Is that cool,
Wow.
Josh?
Well, it's cool. Listen, you can't deny Moses Malone or Charles Barkley, especially Charles Barkley at his peak. He was a monster, but maybe that's what fueled him, right? Sometimes we have to have the things that fuel us if you have the desire and the motivation and the awareness to be able to do all these things. So very beautifully put. And I just want to be mindful of your time. So I'm going to go through these last couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Yes.
The first question is, and we'll just do one. What is your top pet peeve? Or what is something that comes to mind that just really gets you annoyed about anything in general?
Yeah. I think it's personal attacks on social media is one of my greatest concerns in this world. We see so many people putting up misinformation, lies. We see people tearing people apart. It's one of the things that bothers me the most. And, as a matter of fact, we're leaving social media.
Oh.
That's how poor we think it's become. It's against my integrity, Josh. What it's turned into, when we joined in 2009, it was amazing. For the first, I'll say probably 5 or 6 years on social media, we had so much fun. It was very light. It was beautiful. And then it turned into this a place to destroy each other, to have more division and less unity. And that's not a place for me anymore. So what we're doing is we're going back to the boots on the ground. We're going to go back and start doing performances. We're going to start doing prayer circles. We have one on our website right now that anyone can join. We'll be doing prayer circles in person. I'll be doing more lectures, but we're moving away, and it doesn't mean that everyone else should. This is an individual decision. But we've been there long enough to see where it's gone and where it's going. And it doesn't fit our, like I said earlier, our mission, or it doesn't fit our integrity. It doesn't fit anything. So there are other places we'll be doing a lot more. We have about 2,500 YouTube videos. We'll be doing a lot more YouTube videos. And like I said, we'll be doing more in public. But, I'm going to say this humbly. It may not have come across that way, but this is my intent. If you're a leader, you have to be a freaking leader. You have to have balls. You have to be willing to do things that other people will ridicule you for, or they'll say, whatever they want, however they want to judge you, But a leader has to have balls. They have to be willing to do things. Whatever money I lose from not being on social media was not meant for me. I'm fine with that. There's nothing that I have to be afraid of. There's no comment that could be made that will change my mind. And that's what we need in leadership. We need people who are strong. We need people who aren't going to put up with nonsense. I have been all for racial unity since I've been freaking born, for God's sake. I'm disgusted in our country with how we are ending up. This is so unreal to me. It's 2020 freaking 3. I want to use a different word. I won't. I am so sick of this lack of unity, this lack of understanding, this lack of compassion, this lack of empathy. Josh, it is enough already. So we're going to make major moves, and they'll be coming out of the woodwork. And we don't even have to say what we're going to do, but we're going to be doing some pretty heavy duty plays. And it's going to be to help this world get back to the way we believe it can be. If it takes me the rest of my life, I've probably got 30 to 40 years left. If it takes me that much to get to the goal that I want, I am more than willing to do it. My God, I wrote books for 20 years with no recognition ever. It wasn't until the 21st year of writing books that we hit a #1 bestseller. So I've got the patience, I've got the energy, I've got the passion, and I'm putting it together. And if anyone wants to join me and maybe decrease your social media by 50% or by 80%, please do so. There's studies that come out. The Surgeon General just came out with a massive study about the negative effects of social media on the mental health of our youth. Go Google it. Everyone should be reading this crap. We know that at night, 85% of Americans 14 to 80 scroll on their phones, tablets, for 4 hours a night on average. Okay, now, when we look at the sleep disruption cycle that happens by being on your blue light, I don't care if it's a television, phone, tablet, it doesn't matter to me. We have 85% scrolling for hours every night. We have the worst sleep habits in the world right now. We have people doing emotional eating in the evening. 85% of our country, Josh, is overweight. For the first time in the history of the world, 85% of the United States of America is overweight. We can change this, but we've got to make physical changes. It's not just thinking positively. It's what do I need to remove? What in my life is distracting me from being the best Josh ever? What am I doing that is not maximizing my use of time? These are questions I want the human race to ask yourself. And if you ask yourself and you honestly answer, you're going to say, I spend too much time on my phone. I spend too much time on my iPad. 90% of us do. Now, it's
beautifully put. Beautifully put. And very quickly, because again, I know we're going to be running out of time soon. That was very well said. And thank you for sharing that, because you hit every point perfectly. Just because you guys are going down that path doesn't mean everyone else does, but there is ways to be a true leader and then, roll out the strategy you want in your group, in your community. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for the openness that you have with all this. My last question, what is something you're most grateful for?
My life. Number one, the fact that I'm here is just amazing. And number two is my parents. Wow. It's really hard leaving them, it's hard losing them. They are still with me, Josh. I'll make this really quick statement. They're here. They if you go to YouTube, you can watch the visitations that my mom and dad have both visited me with other people around that have noticed what is going on. It's the most incredible stories, and it's on our YouTube channel. Take a moment. If you believe your parents are the cause of all of your problems, just take a moment and slow down. I believed that for a long time, as I said earlier. You know, I don't know. I've been counseling for 43 years. I've never met a parent that intentionally hurt their child every day, that woke up in the morning and said, how could I hit little Johnny better today? How could I make Mary feel more insecure today? I have never met a person who intentionally does this. Parents that incorrectly parent were incorrectly parented, and they didn't know the difference, and they're doing the best they can. If you can forgive them because they're probably repeating the way they were treated, if you can open your mind to that concept, your whole heart will open. Your mind will open. Your compassion will increase. Because if you can do it with core family, you can do it with anyone. The hardest people to accept and forgive is our core family. The mom that was with us that neglected us, the dad that was the addict, whatever it is. They are the hardest people to love and to forgive if we were not emotionally supported as a child. And yet, the freedom comes to us in that moment of forgiveness more so than to our parents. You will become free. You'll become, what I said earlier, a leader, and this is what leaders do. They do the hard work. And so have a little compassion if you were raised. I'm sorry if you were raised in a really tough environment. It hurts my heart. I have not. I mean, we were raised very low middle class. I mean, money was always very tight. But final thing, Josh, and I keep saying this final thing. At 10 years of age, my mom, with her amazing heart, brought from New York City, from Harlem to Syracuse, New York, a Black child that was in a program called the Fresh Air Fund. His name was Michael. And I remember it like yesterday. Michael came to our house and he was scared as hell. I didn't know what to think of it. I'm sure he was just lost. Where the hell am I? I'm surrounded by white people, for God's sake. Our whole neighborhood was white, and the neighborhood went up in arms when we brought a Black child in. Now, this is in the 60s. We brought a Black child in, and my parents went through hell. And my grandfather came and settled everything. And we had Michael for 3 months, and it was bliss. I am blessed to have parents that were so loving to the world, Josh, that my attitude is so different than many other white people because I do not see color. I see love. I see potential. I see everything. I don't see color. I never have, and I never will.
Wow. Whew, that is a mic drop, Mr. Essel. Thank you
Mm,
so much for that. Um, just lastly, could you let people know, and we will put all this into the show notes so
sure.
people can follow you, but can you let people know the best ways to keep in touch with you, especially since you're going to be going off social media? Can
Yeah.
you let people know?
Absolutely. Go to talkdavid.com. It's all I do, talk. So the appropriate name for the website is Talk David. Go to talkdavid.com. You can get 4 free books there. You can download 4 of our books for free. One is the Audible on mental mastery for professional athletes. That's free. All those books on the website are free. So take advantage of that. Join the prayer circle. Put your initials there. We pray for people every day. The list is growing. We love it. We want more people to join that prayer circle. And then, reach out to me at talkdavid.com. Send me an email through our Contact Us. And if there's something really struggling and you just need 15, 20 minutes to vent, to let someone know that you're hurting, let it be me, for God's sake. I will create the space and time so we can have some time together. You're never alone. I've been saying that for years, Josh. No one is ever alone, but sometimes you have to reach out and ask for help, and that's okay.
That is definitely okay. Well, thank you for your time. I truthfully enjoyed this conversation with you. And for all the viewers and the listeners, if you found this to be as profound as I did, then please feel free to share this. Share this with someone that you think could learn something from this, or someone that finds this useful. Because at the end of the day, we are trying to just do our best to create the best communities in this world. So thank you for your time. And this is Josh signing out from Simply Walk the Talk. Peace.
Simply walk the talk.
Walk the talk, talking facts. Move like me, but I move a little fast. Make my move, here to last. Fasten these seatbelts, I'm coming past. Take care of me, longevity. Hack my biology, better believe. Walking the talk, soul, mind, and body connected. Better come give us a listen.